Okay, we are on Facebook Live, and friends, welcome. I have our communications director, Leslie Palma, on the other end of the line here, and she is doing an interview with me here this afternoon that's going to go out on our podcasting. It's going to go out in print form to various publications that want to carry it, and it's going to give you some combination of history and other insights into our work and ministry and into what I'm up to in the pro-life world and in the church. So, Leslie, you've been with us many years and help us connect with many media outlets. Thanks for doing this interview today.
Oh, you're very welcome. I was just trying to remember the first time I came in contact with you. It was probably someplace around 1997 when I did my first interview with you, and I was a reporter. That's a while ago. Yes. Well, didn't you first come to know me, though, not that I'm interviewing you here, but when I was a parish priest in St. Charles on Staten Island? Well, actually, no, my mother did. She was always telling me about this young priest who was always talking about abortion. And she told me a story about how once after Mass, she made everybody, the whole congregation, had to go over into the auditorium and watch some kind of video.
Some kind of...
What do you mean he made... Yeah, some kind of pro-life video. I said, well, what do you mean he made you? And she said, well, he told us to, and so we all did.
And no doubt it was a disturbing video. All right.
Probably. All right, so I have some questions for you.
Yes.
Are we ready?
We are ready.
First one, how has the coronavirus pandemic impacted the work of Priests for Life?
Yes, well, it certainly has changed life for all of us, and of course, in particular, for me and for our Priests for Life team, including Janet Morana and Alvita King, the Rachel's Vineyard team, Brian Kemper, Father Dennis Wild, our associate director, and all of us travel and speak constantly. We're on planes and several times a week, and all of a sudden, everything started getting canceled. There were many events planned for April, latter part of March, April, which is now coming to an end, and May, and even into June now. Many of these events are getting canceled. So not being up in planes all the time personally is a big change for me. And of course, not being in person with the pro-life activists around the country and the world is something that I miss. However, the good thing about all this for Priests for Life, and we've been way less impacted in another way than many other ministries and churches, is that we already had for a long time a very, very big footprint in online broadcasting. What we're doing now on our Facebook page, our podcasting, we and many video platforms and social media platforms, we had already established an expertise in that area and an experience. So all of that now has served us very, very well, that we're able to reach very large audiences. I offer the Mass every day, as you know, live on endabortion.tv and the other social media platforms and video platforms that we're on, educational programs that we're doing live and that we're also redeploying from past interviews. It's just been fabulous in that way. And the work of Priests for Life has not stopped. The only thing really that has changed is, I say all these travels. But for example, even with that, I was scheduled to speak at the Heartbeat International Conference earlier this month, the Pregnancy Center, directors and volunteers coming from all parts of the country. I speak at that conference every year, but this year I was one of the keynote speakers and talking about the elections of 2020, but they did the conference virtually. And so I was able to still give my keynote address, and of course it was very different from being in person. But that's how a number of things now have obviously happened for us. Our supporters, our donors, continue faithful. Of course, there are some people that find it financially very difficult at the present time. But they've stayed faithful because, you know what, they realize what we all need to realize, that this is not at its core an economic problem that we're facing. It's not a failed economy. It's a medical problem. And when the medical crisis passes, our economy, we went into this thankfully, and thank God, and also thank President Trump and his economic advisors, because, this man knows how to build an economy. And so we went into this economy so strong that that has blunted, the impact of the virus. It would have been way worse. It's bad enough now. It would have been way worse. So that's in a nutshell what's going on.
So in other words, your staff is not enjoying a long vacation.
No. Well, no. And some of them are here. We have a very big facility. And so, for example, to get the mail and to send out mail and to fill orders and to do broadcasting, we've got various staff coming in for those essential items. And otherwise, our staff is working from home, and we're having the daily briefing on GoToMeeting and keeping in close contact.
Okay, great. All right, next question. You were originally ordained for the New York Archdiocese by Cardinal John O'Connor, who assigned you to a parish, which my mother attended. Some years later, he gave you permission to lead Priests for Life. Was that his idea or yours?
It was mine, actually. A lot of times priests will be asked by their bishop to change assignment. It's not unusual. They get a call or a letter saying, we're going to move you to a different parish next month, or we're giving you this assignment or that assignment. And obviously that's part of the role of a bishop, is to assign his priests to various forms of work. I was very happy in the parish. Now, sometimes a priest will go to the bishop and request the change of assignment. I wasn't requesting so much a change of assignment. I was very happy in the parish. We had a very large and flourishing parish where were 4 of us priests there. It was delightful, really. It was a great place to start out as a priest. And along with the parish work, I was doing Bible teaching, not only Bible, but I was giving different courses in various programs in the Archdiocese of New York, including their master's degree program in theology and different Bible studies in different parishes. And I was doing a lot of teaching, which I love to do as well. But the pro-life work was my main passion, and that was growing more and more and more. And I came to the point where I was convinced in conscience that I had to give myself full time to protecting the unborn from abortion. All my time, all my energy, all my ministry, all my life. I experienced a call within the call of the priesthood, a call to pro-life within that call. And actually my call to pro-life involvement was intertwined right from the very, very beginning of me thinking about the priesthood. It all happened in my final year of high school. So I went to him. It was my idea. Now, Cardinal O'Connor had been fanning the flames of my pro-life passion because he himself was on fire for this issue, for the unborn. He made it very clear publicly to the whole nation that abortion is issue number 1. And so his leadership, of course, fanned the flames of that, and also led to the happy circumstance that when I did go to him to ask to do this work full time, he said yes, and he gave me his encouragement and his guidance all through the years that followed.
Priests for Life now is one of the largest pro-life organizations in the world. How big was it when you first got started, and how did it get funded?
Well, how big it was when we first got started, there was no staff, no office, no budget to speak of. And when the Cardinal released me to do it full-time, I was the one and only person who was full-time with Priests for Life. Now, Priests for Life had gotten started already by a group of priests in California who had the same idea as I had, that there needed to be something to encourage priests to deal with this number 1 moral issue of abortion. And so they got something started. They got a newsletter started. They got the organization on a solid footing, both as a corporation and also as a ministry in the church. And I joined up with them when I found out about them, and we were in close communication. As it turns out, at the same time that I got permission from the Cardinal to be doing pro-life work full-time, that was my request, pro-life work full-time, it just so happened that at that time, the priest in California who was the first president of Priests for Life called me and said he was going into the military as a chaplain, and then that they were going to need a new director of the organization. He said, would I be interested? I said, well, yes. And he said, perfect timing, because I'm about to ask the Cardinal if I can do pro-life work full time. So I was based in New York. The Cardinal said, establish the office here in New York. You can choose the specific place. There was a parish I knew that had some bedrooms, and all I wanted was a little tiny bedroom, which is exactly what I got. But the pastor there said, I have a little tiny office here that's not being used. Do you want to use that? And I said yes. And I remember the first day sitting down at the desk in that office. I didn't know how to use a computer, a fax machine, or there was no email. I sat down there, put my head down, and began praying. And I said, Lord, now we begin. Now we begin. And I just had to start it from scratch. And the priests out in California, after they officially, handed over the reins of the organization to me, gave me a check for $3,000. That was the money that they had raised through tax-deductible donations. They had set the corporation up as a 501c3. People could become donors. And what was in the whole budget, the whole bank account, was $3,000. So in the ceremony that we had in the cathedral in San Francisco, they handed me this check for $3,000, and they said, Father Frank, take this and defend life. So I brought it back to New York, deposited in a newly established Priest for Life bank account. And then, like you said, how was it funded? I invested my own money in it. I took my entire savings and I just started any bills that came up, printing, traveling, office rental of the office, anything and everything relating to this new ministry, I just paid for myself, and I didn't think twice about that, because it was like, this is my passion now. I want to end abortion. I'm going to give my life to this. When you come to a point where you know that there's something that you want to give your life to, you don't think twice about giving your money to it. So I was able to do that, and then, of course, in doing that, I was able to start hiring some people, and then they showed me what kind of organizational structure this ministry could and should have, including a fundraising program that we have to this day that simply relies on direct mail appeal to faithful pro-life people around the country who, giving a little bit here, a little bit there, it makes things work.
It's an interesting story.
Yeah.
But now, speaking of the name Priest for Life, I've heard you say on your nightly broadcast that some people find the name Priest for Life confusing. They're wondering, is it the organization just for priests, or aren't all priests ordained for life, or do you have to be Catholic to follow Priest for Life? Are you thinking of changing the name of Priest for Life to something else? And if so, what names are you considering?
Well, no, we're going to keep the name Priest for Life. It has a very good track record, a very good reputation. But as you suggest here, it doesn't explain itself fully. I had one bishop early on say to me, oh, Frank, it's great. I hear you have this Priest for Life. It's what a wonderful thing. We have to tell people and remind them that priests are in this for life. And, we're ordained, and that lasts all our life until death. And I said, no, Bishop, I said, of course, that's true. I said, but no, this is Priest for pro-life. And he said, oh, even better. So the name in itself, it's like, what does this mean? In fact, we as Catholics take for granted we know what a priest is, but a lot of people really don't. I mean, they don't know how to spell the word. We found out quite often, and they're not quite sure what exactly it means. So, Priest for Life, what is that? And even when people understand that it's pro-life. And remember, those of us, and many who are listening and watching right now, have been following Priest for Life for years or even decades. So obviously what it means. But for someone for whom they're hearing this for the first time, it's like, okay, even when they understand it's pro-life, pro-life, it covers a lot of issues. So they'll ask us, oh, well, do you deal with capital punishment? Or do you deal with, helping the poor, or climate change, or immigration, or, death penalty, or whatnot? And I explained to them, look, there's all kinds of important issues, but we're established to end abortion. So now an organization that has a particular name and mission can also, in order to make clear certain facets of that mission, especially to certain audiences, can adopt an additional name. And that is something that we have done and are doing. You adapt an additional name and you do business as that name in different circumstances wherever you want to use that name. So, for example, we have two DBAs, as they're called. One is Deacons for Life, because we have an outreach to deacons, and those of you who are deacons, check us out, deaconsforlife.org. But then the other is for Priests for Life generally, so that people understand this is not just for priests. It's not even just for Catholics. It's for anyone who wants to end abortion, which is our mission. And so that people can understand, in fact, that in the pro-life umbrella, it is focused on the most important issue, the most urgent issue, which is abortion. The DBA that we've established now is endabortion.us. Now, that's a website, and it's our website. It's the same website you go to when you enter priestsforlife.org, but endabortion.us is now not only a website address that gets to us, but it is a DBA, doing business as, another name, in other words, for Priests for Life, that clarifies more precisely what our mission is.
Okay, certainly end abortion, there's no ambiguity there.
There isn't, no. There's no ambiguity, no.
When I was about to start work at Priests for Life in 2009, I told a priest who I respected and really admired about my new job, and he said, "Oh, them." He wouldn't elaborate on any specific criticism he might have had, but I always wondered, why would a Catholic priest find fault with a pro-life ministry?
Yeah, well, I find fault with somebody who has a problem with an organization and doesn't have the clarity and courage to say what the problem is. That what you point out there is a common enough phenomenon. People are, they're just enough willing to criticize, but not willing to back up their criticism. I have seen, heard, experienced this from all directions, and unfortunately, it's not uncommon in our society. It's not uncommon in the church. So, we can't read this priest's mind, but as you say, we could speculate as to what problem a priest could possibly have with a pro-life ministry. And I'll tell you some of the problems I've found over the years that some priests have. It's not with the idea of fighting abortion. There are exceptions even to that. There are such things as pro-choice clergy, unfortunately, even within the Catholic community, although it's by no means a major segment of the priests. These priests have become priests because they want to be sons of the church. They want to be representatives of the church. They're ordained to represent the church. And they, by and large, they accept the teachings of the church. So they're against abortion. But, we take and people have said to me over the years, and this is where some priests will say, "Oh, them." They'll say we're too aggressive against abortion. And I've actually had that word used about me by some bishops too. Too aggressive on abortion. And my response, try to say it very politely, is, when abortion stops being aggressive on these babies, then I'll stop being aggressive on abortion. But we're talking about mass murder here. We're talking about a Holocaust. So there's no such thing as being too aggressive on abortion. Now, some people say, "Oh, them," because they're reacting to ideas that they've gotten about us that are simply false. Let me give you a couple of examples. Some people, when they see us, for example, protesting, I've led lots of protests across the country, so protesting abortion on the streets in these public demonstrations. And some people have this stereotype in their mind that that's hateful, it's violence. Talk to Martin Luther King Jr. about the value of protest, and we have his niece right here on our team, as you know, Alveda King. Those things are part of the fabric of America. Protest is a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing, and it's a peaceful thing. But some don't like that, and so they say, "Oh yeah, these guys go out there and they're doing these demonstrations," and because that makes them uncomfortable, they might then transfer in their mind a negative view of us. And then some people think that that's all we do, or they might hear me, advocating for political pro-life progress. Which, by the way, I don't know any other way to change laws than to elect people who are going to pass the right laws, right? So we have political advocacy, but it's like sometimes if people pigeonhole you, and we are all subject to this, right? There are people in our lives that I call it snapshot thinking. They get an impression of you at a certain time and in a certain circumstance, and that snapshot of that one moment in time in that limited circumstance becomes the definition of who you are. So, some people might see me at a protest, or they might hear me, make a political statement. Oh, well, that's who they are. No, it's not who we are. You want to know who we are? Take the time and the trouble to get to know who we are. And you'll see that we run, for example, the world's largest ministry of compassionate, effective healing for those who have had abortions. We have Rachel's Vineyard under our umbrella of Priests for Life Family of Ministries, Silent No More. The compassion that we work on every single day for those that have had abortions, and even for the former abortionists, they come to us for healing, for peace. Our ministry really is multifaceted, and some people, for example, know that we advocate showing the pictures of the aborted babies. I had one time in the Archdiocese of Boston, to name names, years and years ago. I don't know, these people who were in charge there aren't in charge anymore, but in the Respect Life office, they said to me, we can't have Father Frank come into the parish because he shows pictures of aborted babies. It's like when I go into a parish for a pro-life weekend, what did they have? What did they have in their mind? Of course, if they wanted to know what I do, they could have asked me, or they could have asked the hundreds of other parishes that have had me in to preach. The priests that have me come in are absolutely delighted at what happens. A compassionate, clear message given to the people from the readings of the Sunday and reflecting the teachings of the church. You want to see what I preach in my pro-life homilies, get my book called Proclaiming the Message of Life, which has the fruit of 25 years of experience of preaching on this practically every day, not only every weekend. And you'll see it's not this stereotype that apparently some of those folks had of, Father's going to come marching into the church with a big picture of an aborted baby. I mean, sometimes the conclusions people draw in their head are just downright insulting to us, and really not very complimentary to them when you think about how shallow you have to be to come to that conclusion about somebody. And then of course you have the false accusations that everybody who's in public life has to face. In fact, it wasn't even any kind of an accusation or an allegation, but I had at a particular time a bishop that wasn't very favorable to me, and he started raising questions publicly about our finances. I think it was, perhaps jealousy or an envy that, we had more of a budget than his entire diocese. But be that as it may, we never had the slightest problem or accusation of anything being done wrong. As a matter of fact, every year we get a healthy financial audit. We have people on our board who are Wall Street executive people who know the world of finance better than they know the back of their hand, and they advise us day by day. We've got a fantastic team. Everything is done according to the books, and we get these great audits, and we even had a financial report come even from the Vatican, because we had them help us out at various stages of our ministry, and they said, you guys are well administered financially. So, and yet, nevertheless, people, when they think negatively of somebody, that negative thought takes on a life of its own, apparently. Nobody has to prove their innocence, like I said, that the bishop that didn't like me said, "Oh, well, we have questions, about your finances." Well, you know what? I could say the same thing about anybody. I have questions about your finances, too. Doesn't mean I'm telling you did anything wrong or that I think you did anything wrong. Well, I have questions about your finances. Yeah, well, we can all say that. The point of the matter is, okay, is there something that you think we did wrong? Well, no. And in fact, right after that, what would you call it? That just that statement of doubt was made publicly. The vicar general of that diocese had to send out a public letter saying, "Oh, no, Father Frank or Priest for Life are we're not saying they've done anything wrong, And it was a smart thing to send out that letter, because otherwise you can get in some serious legal trouble, never mind moral trouble, by trying to raise doubts about whether somebody's doing things the right way. So, who knows what people hear over the years, and these are some of the more blatant examples of why someone like you said can hear about us and say, oh them. So hopefully as the years have gone on, he's learned more about us that will make him say something more positive.
I just want to stay on the subject of priests for a second. Do you think younger priests, those ordained in the last 10 years or so, are stronger advocates for life?
Younger people in general are stronger advocates for life, and so that would include those who choose the priesthood. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why. They realize that they are survivors. And this survivor syndrome is one of the things we teach and deal with in Priests for Life, especially in our healing programs, Rachel's Vineyard, Silent No More, and so forth, that there's that awareness. Secondly, many of these younger priests, and I would say even more than 10 years ago, going back even farther than that, I began to notice this halfway through my current years of service to Priests for Life, that the priests who were being ordained, many of them found their vocation in and through the pro-life movement. And even for me, it was the pro-life movement very much that nourished my vocation. And so, it's one thing, I'm not going to say that the younger priests are more pro-life, because that's not fair to say, because, you look back in the entire history of the church has always been clearly pro-life, and any priest that's going to get ordained in the Catholic Church knows full well and is going to be someone, and again, with very, very rare exceptions. There's exceptions to just about everything. They're going to be committed to pro-life in the sense that they know abortion is wrong, they want it to end, and they will be faithful in articulating the Church's teaching that the unborn, as a marvelous gift of God, have the right to be protected. Now, having said that, it's one thing to know and embrace and teach the teaching of the Church on pro-life. It's a different set of skills and knowledge, however, to know how to fight a cultural battle. I mean, you can be pro-life in an age where abortion is illegal and, everybody looks down on it. But how about in an age where it's legal at any time in pregnancy for any reason and there's a multi-billion-dollar industry behind it? Wow. I mean, you have to have a different mindset there. You're going into battle now. And so what I'm saying is that the priests that are coming along, like you say, in the last 10 years, even more, they've grown up with the battle. Many of these priests have said, oh, yeah, my mom and dad, they used to bring me to the abortion clinic and we would have the rosary or we would pray or protest or go to the March for Life and whatnot. So having grown up with the movement, they understand better the battle. And in that sense, our job in ministering to priests has gotten easier as the years have gone on, because they speak our language and they understand the contours of the pro-life movement.
Okay, shifting gears a little bit. In 2015, Thomas Nelson published your book, Abolishing Abortion, and I remember proofreading it for you before it came out, and you came down pretty hard on some dioceses and bishops, although not by name. I was worried about it. I kept saying, don't you want to tone this down? But don't you worry about making enemies in high places? And also, in the years since you wrote the book, do you think that bishops have become bolder in speaking out against abortion?
I hope so. I mean, Cardinal O'Connor was a really strong voice. Nobody really ever replaced him, though many do speak out strongly against abortion. I mean, the Pope has spoken out strongly against abortion. But, Cardinal O'Connor, John Paul II, they were, towering high and above anybody and everybody else. No, I'm not afraid of making enemies because I don't have any ill will towards anybody. And so it's not there's a desire to make someone into an enemy. It's not a prejudice against somebody that, I want to turn against them. Let's make this person my enemy. I will tell the truth, though. And in my book, one of the things I've been trying to do is, you can sum it up in this way: encourage and embolden. I'm trying to encourage and embolden the church, my brother priests, even the bishops, the dioceses, the structures of the church, to do what they need to do in the realm of elections. My book is called Abolishing Abortion. People can get it at abolishingabortion.com. And you will see in that book that I lay out a manifesto for church and state. What are the next things we have to do to end abortion? And I spend a significant amount of time exploring how the church censors herself even more than the law requires us to, censors herself in speaking about politics. And what I mean here is, we have this Johnson Amendment, which, by the way, President Trump has told the federal agencies not to enforce unfairly against churches and tax-exempt ministries, because there has been a lot of not so much enforcement. There has been a lot of confusion, the very same confusion I come against in my book, about what the requirements of the law are. And essentially, to sum it up, when a pastor, a priest, a bishop is afraid that by speaking a pro-life message at election time, or by speaking about elections in the sense of, hey, everybody, we got to get out and vote, and we've got to vote pro-life, because after all, protecting life is the first duty of government. Now, we're going to get our tax-exempt status taken away. They're going to preach something on Sunday, and Monday morning, the IRS is going to be knocking at the door to take away their tax-exempt status. And if they take away the tax-exempt status of the one church, because the churches are all interconnected, it's going to bring down the whole tax-exempt status of the Catholic Church in the United States of America, from coast to coast, and Alaska and Hawaii too. Nonsense! Nonsense is what I say in this book. Nonsense. No church has ever lost its tax-exempt status for anything they have preached from the pulpit, anything. And the fact of the matter is that they won't. They won't. And I go into the reasons why in that book. But Leslie, I do quote in that book. This is probably where you were saying, you sure you don't want to tone it down a little bit? I quote various memos, memos that have gone out from dioceses and chanceries to the priests and to the parishes, basically telling them to shut up when it comes to elections. And in fact, they say it in such a way that it cannot possibly be observed. What I mean is, and I quote again, people need to get the book, abolishingabortion.com, and they'll say things like this: do not directly or indirectly, expressly or by implication, say anything that would reflect poorly on or reflect favorably on a candidate or a political party. Now, I want to ask everybody in the sound of my voice right now, when you have a major political party, i.e. the Republicans, saying that the unborn are to be protected, they have a right to life. When you have the opposing party, the Democrats, saying publicly that abortion is a right and is unrestricted and should be paid for by the taxpayer. And then you have the church coming along saying the unborn need to be protected because they have a right to life. How can a priest articulate the teachings of the church and not shed a negative light on the Democrat Party and a positive light on the Republican Party? How is that possible? It's not logically possible to follow the advice that nothing we say should ever reflect poorly on a candidate or a party, or ever reflect favorably on a candidate or a party. If I stand up and say the unborn have to be protected, and a candidate is saying that they can be destroyed, and another candidate is saying they have to be protected, My words do reflect positively on the pro-life candidate, but whose fault is that? I'm not forcing that candidate what position to take. I'm not dictating whether he or she should be pro-life or pro-abortion. They take the position they want to take. The candidates and the parties too. And if tomorrow all the candidates and parties on both sides of this issue were to swap their positions, would our message change? No, it would not. Not one iota. And that is where our book comes in, and that is what exactly the book says.
Okay, all right, changing gears a little bit. We've mentioned Cardinal OConnor a couple times in this conversation, and we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of his death. He was a major influence in your life. What was it like? What was it like for you personally to lose him, and what impact did it have on your ministry?
You know, as it turned out, the day he died, and we're coming up on the 20th anniversary, it was May the 3rd in 2000, I happened to be at EWTN saying the daily masses. And that to me was I think that was a gift from the Cardinal. It was a great opportunity for me to, in that Mass, and by the way, my homilies from EWTN and from everywhere else actually are on our Priests for Life website, endabortion.us. I was able to share with the world his example, his teaching, the way he influenced me. It was, we miss him terribly. It was like I said before, no one has filled the vacuum that he left, and so we miss him personally. I have a great joy of knowing his sister, Mary Ward, and she lives there in the Philadelphia area where she and her brother, the Cardinal, and their other siblings grew up. And so my contact with her is a nice, knowing her for herself, of course, is a great blessing. And then, having that connection, it's a living connection with the Cardinal. That's a great source of joy.
Okay. When you first took over Priests for Life, you were based in New York, but at one point you moved to Texas.
Texas.
Why did you do that?
Texas. Everything's big in Texas, and we had a big idea. The bishop of Amarillo, Texas, Bishop Yanta, invited me to come to explore whether we could start a community of Priests for Life. Now, Priests for Life it's a civil corporation. Okay, by the way, EWTN is as well. The Knights of Columbus is as well. These are civil corporations, independent entities that serve the church by being inspired and shaped by Catholic principles, and then trying to implement those principles in the world. So that's what we are. But there could also be, like Cardinal O'Connor started the Sisters of Life. That was one of his great legacies. The Sisters of Life, a religious community dedicated specifically to ending abortion, helping the unborn, helping their moms and their dads and their families, helping heal the wounds of abortion, etc. All the things that we do as well. But the thing is that I felt like, maybe this is something we need to explore. I wanted to explore it because I was thinking that, and in fact, I wasn't just thinking of it, I knew that there were other priests that wanted to do the same thing, that felt the same call that I felt, which was, let's give ourselves completely to the unborn. Because there are priests that give themselves completely to education, youth work like the Salesian community, teaching, education, Jesuits and others, Franciscans, working with the poor. I mean, those are all different charisms in the church. Is there not going to be a charism for the biggest moral tragedy of our day, the abortion tragedy that takes more human lives than anything else and deals with the most helpless human beings, the unborn children? You mean to say there's not going to be anything in the church that rises up to help them in an organized way? So the bishop was willing to explore that. And so that's why I transferred over to Texas at that time. Now, as it turned out, we learned that the structure that we already had and the track record we already were living with Priests for Life was a much better model than a community where everyone would be living in one place. We've got our priests and our pastoral team living in all different places, and because we're always moving around, we're always responding to the needs of the pro-life movement wherever we need to go. So the model wasn't right, but we had to discern. I wanted to leave no stone unturned, and even now, I'm convinced that there is some additional entity that needs to be established in the church specifically for pro-life, because right now for a young man that wants to be a priest and just devote himself completely to the unborn is really not a clear place to go where you can be, sure that that's going to be your work. I think we still need to establish something, but that was the explanation for moving there to switch dioceses out there to under Bishop Yonta in Texas.
Okay. In 2016, you gained a measure of infamy for showing the body of an aborted baby in a video. Were you expecting the kind of backlash it received? And did you also hear messages of support?
I don't think I got infamy because I was showing an aborted baby, because I had done that before. And this is the strange thing about what happened in 2016. I posted a video. I was doing a series of videos in the days before the 2016 election, monumental as that election was. And so this was part of a series. This was like the seventh day of an 8 or 9 day series of talks that I was giving at our Priest for Life office, broadcasting them on Facebook, right? So I had done baby the funerals of aborted babies many times before in my role as director of Priest for Life. And every time we did it, we showed the body of the baby, or the bodies, plural. In fact, we did one at EWTN. Back in 2008, we did a massive public funeral. And we've got the video footage of that. But, we had an open casket. We had a wake service first. And we showed the people, these aborted babies. We have to show them. And so I wasn't doing anything different than I had done many, many times before, quite publicly and without apology. I think what got people really riled up was I did it in the context of calling out, as I do again right now, calling out the Democrat Party for killing these babies. This was an election between the man who turned out to be the most pro-life president we've ever had and the woman who would have been the most pro-abortion president we ever had. And for many voters, that's not about me, for many voters, that was and is today issue number one. So, as a matter of fact, the bishops say that too. Living the Gospel of Life, which is a document I quoted during that election and during every election, says, we've got to start with a commitment not to kill the innocent. That's where we start in our moral analysis of all the different issues. It's like the foundation of the house, the right to life. And abortion strikes at the foundation. Sure, you can have all these other parts of the house, but they're all going to collapse if you don't have the foundation. So I was just making that point. But I think people got angry because I was, they thought I was being too political. And then they got confused, and this is the only part I would do differently in the future. They got confused because I was standing at a table that we also use as an altar. And that's where I was doing all the videos of that 9-day series of videos. So I was standing there, and I used the word altar, but it's a table that we sometimes use for Mass. It's not an altar, and it's not a chapel. And some people, in their ignorance and in their rush to condemn me, said, well, Father Frank brought an aborted baby into Mass and had said Mass with the baby on the altar. These people must be on drugs, or they're very, very ignorant, because, I had my clerical suit jacket on. When's the last time you saw a priest say Mass in his suit jacket? I would never. I know something about liturgy. I was the master of ceremonies for Dunwoody and for Cardinal O'Connor when he came to the seminary. And we know a little bit something about what is and is not permitted on the altar or in the Mass. These people are just, it's like we were saying before, people rush to judgment. They talk before they listen, and they don't bother to get to know you. And if somebody, my friends, let's just take this as a lesson for life. If somebody doesn't have the courtesy of getting to know you before they criticize you, then you don't need their praise either. And if somebody doesn't have the common courtesy and the humility, for that matter, to go to you and ask about something that they saw or heard you do before they pass judgment on it, that person has the problem, not you. But Leslie, you asked if I had gotten praise about that. Let me read a few quotes that came in. I got overwhelming praise for what I did. here's some of the emails that came out, or some of the comments on Facebook. People need to see this. Eisenhower did the same thing, walked the Germans through the death camps so they could see the face of evil. Another person said, unfortunately, this is necessary to wake people up. To most, this is abstract. When they actually see it, it opens their eyes and hopefully their hearts. Another person, I want to thank you for posting this. Many people are afraid to see this reality. This was very brave of you, and you weren't afraid of any backlash either. By the way, I'm still not afraid of backlash today. So much respect for you. God bless. Another person said, blunt force truth. Abortion makes our culture no more civilized than those in the past who practiced human sacrifice. Another person said, I'm not saying this because I endorse this idea, this priest will be canonized one day as a patron of the unborn children. Well, thank you for your kindness in saying that. But it shows people are supportive of this. People are supportive of those that leaders, they want leaders in the church and they want leaders in the government to speak the truth and to speak it with courage. And that's what leadership is about. That's what leadership is about. So thanks for asking me about that.
All right, well, I have one follow-up question to that. We're in another election season. Should we prepare to be shocked?
We should be prepared for victory. We should be prepared to rejoice. We should be prepared to see yet another way in which President Trump wins, and wins again. I think we're going to have a greater victory than we had in 2016. And in that sense, it will shock the pundits. It will shock the Trump haters. It will shock those who, have this. I really believe there is such a thing, and someday psychologists will analyze it in depth, Trump derangement syndrome, where nothing regarding President Trump can be considered, thought about, or discussed rationally, but they end up just reacting with this bitter rage. But I'm advocating for him to win re-election. I believe that he will. And I think we're going to see in this election, like we did 4 years ago, a lot of people scratching their heads saying, how on earth did that happen? And my prayer is that everyone listening to us right now or reading this will be part of the reason why it happened.
All right. Well, that's all the questions I have for right now.
Thank you for this.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for this interview. Brothers and sisters, this is Leslie Palma is our communications director at Priest for Life, and she wanted to do this interview with me so that we could send it out to various other outlets. It's going to be in print version. It's going to be podcast. But you've had the chance to watch it live, those of you that are on Facebook right now. And I want to thank you for your attention and your participation in this. And thank you, Leslie, for doing it, and we will be in touch soon, no doubt.
All right. Goodbye.
God bless.